Mother 2 from the Pretend Pros here, coming at you with a Severog deck that I've titled Greg, mostly based on Greg the Grim from Conker's Bad Fur Day, one of my favorite games. Nevertheless, that's not important. What's important is you're here and you want to understand why I made this deck the way I did and how you can use it to benefit your Severog gameplay. Severog is one of my favorite characters in this game, and because of this, I've spent a lot of time tweaking and refining this deck to what I feel is not perfect, but pretty near perfection for the current meta. Severog is heavily reliant on his ability to get stacks in the jungle early to mid game, because games are shorter now, so you're not going to be able to, rely on the opportunity to have late game farm with his square every single time. And because of that, you need to speed up the process. So normally I would have gone straight tank, but because of that fact, I feel as though Severog needs not a lot of extra damage, but just enough to help you farm and clear the jungle quickly to pick up those sweet stacks. Basically, the first item in my build with Severog in every game is always a Stalkers Key. Now, why a Stalkers Key? Why do you want to build that first? Because Severog is not a fucking laner. He is a jungler, and he should be played as such. Stalker's Key is the best key for him because he attacks really slowly, but he does enough damage right at the get-go that you can go on blue side of jungle and, use your siphon on the minion camps a few times before you need to go back. Stalker's Key just gives you a bit of sustainability in the form of lifesteal, which, it's a damn good item. Look at that. It gives you lifesteal, and on top of that, every time you hit a minion, it will give you 8 health. So it becomes now much more difficult for white camps to kill you, and sustainability, keeps you in jungle longer, and if you're alive, then you're probably farming, and if you're farming, you're getting stacks, and if you're getting stacks, you're going to be tanky as fuck. Now, jumping down to it, sorry, I'm clearing my throat here. The next item I build with Severog is usually a Carver blade. The reason for this is because Severog attacks slower than paint dries, grass grows, and continental drift happens. It's just so fucking slow. Now, taking that into account, you need to get stacks faster, even more so now than ever because the game is just much faster paced. A Carver blade is a must because it gives you the damage to clear the camp quickly, it gives you a little bit of attack speed, and then once you fully upgrade it, it gives you even a bit more of attack speed, which is ultimately the goal. The reason I've put major strikes on here is because you don't need a lot of attack speed on Severog, but you need the damage output. The way I've geared this deck is that you'll have enough damage output that you'll still be a threat in fights, but you'll be tanky as fuck and near unkillable if played correctly. So basically what you'd want to do is you'd want to build your Stalker's Key and then rush your Carver blade as quickly as you fucking can. Normally by the time you're done the Carver blade, you should have enough damage and attack speed that within the first 10 to 11 minutes, you should have your first set of 20 stacks, easily. Now, maybe you want to gank a lane, maybe you want to deal a little bit more damage. Okay, no problem. Amulet of the Veteran is there for you. Basically, the whole point of Amulet of the Veteran is for the health and the extra bit of damage. You don't necessarily need this bit of damage after you've built your Carver blade, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have it if you want it. Now, usually for my third item, obviously it's not the third completed item, it's going to be the second completed item. You could build Amulet of the Veteran, if you're in jungle, you're not in a rush, but if you are in a rush, definitely consider a Mad Spore Sash. Essentially what this does, here I'm going to open it up here, is it gives you health regain per second. So while you're in jungle, you're gaining a lot of health, that's good. I mean, you're gaining health anyways, anywhere. And it gives you physical armor. That's a huge asset in this game, especially since it deals 15 damage plus player level in energy damage to all nearby enemies and enemy heroes. This gives you a lot of sustainability and bonus damage, You could be dealing an extra 30 damage per second, let's say, approximately, per second while you're in these fights. And full build, you're going to have about 5,000 health and a shit ton of armor, mind you. So they're going to have a lot of trouble killing you, and while you're autoing them, you know, maybe you're only hitting them for 100 damage, but this Mad Spore Sash is now dealing 30 energy damage on top of your 100 physical damage, so that then becomes 130, but it's 30 damage to everyone around you, not necessarily the person you're attacking. So that gives you a huge advantage. If you need to clear something quickly, you know, definitely consider a Mad Spore Sash. Now, you may not need the Mad Spore Sash until late game, but it's definitely a core part of this build. Obviously, the most important part are the armor cards. Tempered plates, of course. The way I've built these is 2 greater guards and a greater health. The reason for this being is Severog is reliant on, you know, his ability to siphon minions and gain health, but sometimes you just can't siphon enough minions quick enough to get that extra bonus health, so this is where the greater health comes into play. I've equipped the Toon barriers as well with 2 beta barriers and a greater health for the exact same reason. Severog is naturally tanky, so because of the fact that he's naturally tanky, you don't necessarily need as much armor as you would on another character. Say Kwong, for example, I had 3 beta barriers on him versus, you know, on Severog, you only need 2 and a greater health. The reason for this now, sorry Josh, I'm going to have to cut you off there for a second, is just simply because you want to have as much armor and as much health as you can. Now, in what situation should you build the tempered plate and Toon barrier? Essentially what you want to do is you want to look at the enemy team and play it by ear, and just decide, do I need physical armor or energy armor? Who is excelling on their team? Who has the most kills? Who has the least amount of deaths? It's all, you know, up in the air. And you absolutely need to be very careful about how you build this armor, because, you know, you want to have enough damage output that you can still farm quickly and be relevant in fights, but you can still survive long enough if you happen to be caught in one. That's where a Thorn Greenweave comes into play. Essentially what this does is it gives you a bit of damage and some energy armor. Now maybe you don't need this extra damage because you built your Wind Carver Blade and your Amulet of the Veteran. No problem, build a Toon barrier instead. But maybe you didn't get a chance to build your Amulet of the Veteran. Maybe now you want a bit of extra damage and some sustain with some armor. Not a problem, that's where Thorn Greenweave comes into play. Essentially, you have to decide what you want. Do you want armor? Do you want health? Do you want damage? Do you want a mix of the two? Every item here is geared towards making you tankier while still providing you with a means of becoming a huge threat in fights. And last but not least is a Chieftain's Crown. Basically what this does is it simply grants 4.2 health regen to nearby minions. Now, when would you need this? The only time I would suggest that you need this is if you manage to pick up OP buff, and because of the fact that you took Centurion, because you're not an idiot, you absolutely want to finish with the Chieftain's Crown, because basically how the Centurion works is it gives 100 max health to minions. Now if you're walking with these minions, they're now stronger, they're tankier, and they're regaining health per second. You're going to be able to dive towers like it's your fucking day job. And especially since towers are weaker now, you absolutely want to consider doing this. It's not necessarily a must, but it definitely doesn't hurt. Now, going back to Mad Spore Sash here, you don't need to upgrade this card per se, but the health regen per second and the beta guard certainly make you a huge threat in fights. Last but not least, because I am such a preacher of using 40 of 40 cards, definitely consider using these upgrades. You don't need them. You know, maybe you don't need them, maybe you do need them. But they're there if you need them. It's all situational based. Maybe you're dealing a shit ton of damage, or maybe you're super fucking tanky, you want some extra health regen, and you have the extra cards to allot for. Alpha Heal is your guy. Maybe, you know, all of a sudden you don't want that extra health, you don't want that greater health in Veteran's Amulet. Now you put a Major Strike. Anyways, to sum up, the Severog deck is mostly revolving around tank. He is a tank. Please don't try and play him as a brawler. But the way I've geared these cards is you should still have enough damage output to still be a threat and pose a problem to any enemy team, as long as you didn't feed early on and you managed to get some stacks. This is Mother Sue from the Pretend Pros. I really hope this helped you. If it did, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe below. If it didn't, I'm sorry. Please let me know below why it didn't, and I will do my best to fix it up and help you so that it does. Thanks again for watching.